we do have a second speaker, and his name is Kamuela Werner. I want to, yeah, good name. And his family, we want to clap for his family. They occupy the third row. Kamuela is currently a graduate research assistant in the Community Engagement Division of the Department of Native Hawaiian Health at the University of Hawaii, John A. Burns School of Medicine. What he does is he develops, he implements, and he sends out scientific and medical information to health professionals within a coordinated 30 health organizations, over 50 sites that serve Native Hawaiians and other Pacific people in Hawaii and across the continent in the US. He also assists to maintain the Malala'au Lapa'au. So Jabson has their own medicinal plant garden, which he helps to take care of, which is used as a living outdoor classroom that provides opportunities for learners to appreciate Hawaiian ancestral knowledge and reconnect to the land. He has prior academic experience in natural resource management, particularly in the area of native plant conservation. So right now he's in his second year of graduate school in the Department of Public Health, specializing in Native Hawaiian health and indigenous health. He's from Wai'anae, but he currently resides in Waimanalo, Oahu, with his grandparents. So can we all welcome Kamuela. See, can we have some of your technical assistance? Please hold on. But
okay. Yeah. So in the fourth row in this direction is my ohana, my immediate ohana, my brother Kealoha, my mother Sonia, my youngest sister Mahialani, my brother Kamali'i, my father Floyd, and my little brother Kanaloa. I'm one of 11. I'm the second of 11. So half of us is here. My best friend's here, Wahine, Natasha Wahine Ai Ōpio Tong. She recently graduated from the University of Hawaii, Hawaiian Studies Department with her master's. She now works at OHA. So I'll be talking about my current project. I'm a master's in public health graduate student, and I will be creating or recreating and reestablishing a Native Hawaiian Epidemiology Center. And I'll describe what an epidemiology center is in the next few minutes. But I was asked to talk about where I come from. I'm sure you guys are all wondering who I am, what am I doing here, why do I have a passion for data, why do I have a passion for Native Hawaiian data specifically. So I'll tell you why. So that's me, born 1988, to my mother, my father, of course. My ancestry is Hawaiian, Lithuanian, German, Chinese, Portuguese, Samoan, you name it, I got it. I was born and raised for most of my young life on Mohihi Street in this quaint house that used to look so big when I was 5 and now looks like a quaint cottage. I went to Maili Elementary from kindergarten to 6th grade. Later moved to Maili down St. John's Road. This is our hale right now, where we still reside. Went to Wai'anae Intermediate, and then freshman year, Wai'anae High School. Later transferred to Nānākuli High School from sophomore year to senior year. This is also my father's alumni. So I come from a huge family. I'm one of 11, like I said. This is my great-grandmother, my mom's tutu. And this was in 1992, when I was 4 years old. And like you can see, just from the small picture, how much descendants she has. And she herself has 10 children. That's my tutu in the middle. And that's all of her siblings. This is my ohana that I'm currently, I live with my tutu right now on Manalo. And this is my father's side. Sorry, Dad, I couldn't find many pictures, so this is the only one I found. This is my papa, my dad's sisters and brothers in the back. You might recognize them. I'm sure you guys do. Anybody? Nānākuli residents? They all live in Nānākuli. Yes, this is us. Small and young, happy. These are all my first cousins. We all blossomed into our adulthood, our own personalities, our own careers, interests. These are my siblings now, my sister Malia, my brother Kikona and Kikoa, 4 that are not here, the 3 that are here, and the one that is right there. So after graduating from Nānākuli, I had to decide what I wanted to do with myself. I unfortunately didn't prepare quick enough for the SATs, so I didn't get into UH Manoa, so the best bet was to go to Leeward Community College, which is what I did. So I left home from Maili and started my introduction into myself at Leeward Community College. It was here that I had amazing experiences. I learned what it meant more to be a Native Hawaiian than I ever did within K through 12, I feel. I developed fantastic friendships. I went to, I feel like every island, every lo'i, every beach, every mountain. And like I said before, I feel like I really discovered myself in that community college setting, especially within the Ho'ulu project, which is coordinated by Paul Kalani'o Boy Flores over there, within Hawai'inuiakea Pu'uloa. So after graduating, I still didn't know what was at the end of the rainbow. I knew that I loved plants, so I went into Natural Resource Management at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, a Bachelor's of Science program. It was not an easy road. It actually took me 4 years and a half. I wasn't savvy in the sciences. I started at a basic math level and had to work my way all the way up to calculus. It was made possible through Kua'ana Native Hawaiian Student Services that paid for most of my tuition. Native Hawaiian Student Services that are here now that have helped create this event. And Native Hawaiian Science and Engineering Mentorship Program. And all of these programs are built upon the backs of so many of our Hawaiian patriots and Hawaiian people who believe in education, and so I really have to mahalo those people. I stand on huge shoulders at where I'm at now because of these individuals. Anything else? Yes, so I studied natural resource management with a specialization in native plant conservation. And I think what inspired that was, in Nānākuli, I was a very reclusive child. I never really played outside. I was a library person, I was a bookworm, and I was really fascinated with ecology. And I didn't know exactly why, but I just was. And now that I realized, after going through my Bachelor's of Science program, I saw in Native Hawaiian plants, if no one's familiar, because Native Hawaiian plants are very rare here. They represent maybe less than 20% of what you see today. And they're known as, Hawaii is known as the endangered capital of the world. And I think why I was so interested in plant conservation was because subconsciously I saw them as my people. So I thought in conserving them, I conserve our lahui. The things you find out later in life. So after graduating, this is my cousin Mara, I aspired to even greater heights and I wanted to enroll in the Master's in Public Health program, which is what I did at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Public health, if you're not familiar with it, refers to an organized measures, whether it's public or private, that tries to promote health, prevent disease, and prolong life within a population. It's not individual based. Public health professionals monitor and diagnose health concerns of entire communities and promote health practices and behaviors to ensure that populations stay healthy. These are some public health campaigns that you might be familiar with. Breastfeeding. Did you know that breastfeeding is an issue in Hawaii? Especially because there is a high rate of young women who are having children, and there's a stigma attached with breastfeeding, so they limit it to bottles only, which is why there's this current campaign of breastfeeding. We know biologically breastfeeding is the best thing you can do for your baby.
Yes.
Another campaign is this 5210 program for children. It gives you the standards of how much vegetables and fruits they should eat, 5, how many servings, how many screen time on television, iPad, whatever law. 2, how much time in physical activity, 1, and how much sugary drinks, 0. Candy, 0. Sorry, I'm public health, I'm really passionate about this. Another campaign is elderly who fall, and as a result, when they fall, they have injuries that last a long time, or they just, unfortunately, hala, or pass. Every 18 seconds, an older adult is in the emergency room because of a fall. A really, I think, effective one, too, was the Hawaii Meth Project, where you would see these posters of actors who would be painted and would replicate how a meth user would look like after long use. It gives you that visual and that preventative measure to never do it, ever, as well as vaccines for flu season. And what we've seen in the recent years, too, is the new smoking laws that have been implemented in Hawaii. This campaign shows what happens within 15 years if you quit. You have all these positive benefits that build upon each other. There are several specializations within the public health program. There's epidemiology, there's behavioral and social public health, and there is this, the Native Hawaiian and Indigenous Health specialization, which I am in. It is spearheaded by Dr. Maile Tauali'i, a bioinformaticist, as well as a bioethicist, Dr. Trina Delormire, who is a First Nations woman of the Mohawk tribe. Her specialization is in traditional food systems. These students are my cohort. They represent individuals from various tribes and communities within the United States. We're still trying to recruit Maori, so we have people from the Hopi Nation, people from the Navajo Nation, Chamorros, Samoans, of course Native Hawaiians, and that's about it for now. So the program focus is to prepare students for leadership roles in Indigenous health and policy research, and to make it culturally safe for the communities that they serve. The competencies include describing Indigenous peoples' health in a historical context, which analyzes the impacts of colonial processes on health. So how does contact affect us now? How does it resonate from then on to now? That's what that demonstrates. It analyzes comparative health indicators and social determinants of health for Indigenous peoples. It evaluates public health policy and programs, whether or not they're effective or not, whether or not they're sensitive to our culture, whether or not they're sensitive to how we view the world. Another competency is to demonstrate a disease prevention strategy which values and incorporates Indigenous people's traditional knowledge, which is my project. So now we get to the guts of what I was trying to emphasize prior. I'm in the business of data, and of course mana. Data is mana. With data, you can move mountains, you can influence, you can push people to see things, because evidence-based speaks louder than emotion. Objectivity is louder than subjectivity, or at least in the American view. And since that's the dominant culture right now, that's the framework that we have to operate in. But before we know where to go, we have to just understand what happened in the past that led up to now. Historical exposures, contact. I'll just be talking about Hawaii, not any other Indigenous group. One of the greatest impacts that has resonated today is population collapse. There's speculation that our population was 1 million, and with the introduction of communicable diseases such as measles, typhoid, dysentery, our population shrunk to a mere fraction, perhaps 1/10. Another historical exposure was the abolishment of our traditional religious system from Aikapu to Ainoa, which had its own resonating factors, just the separation of what was old and the shame that was attributed to those old ways in light of a culture that was completely new and not completely opposite, but just viewed those things as heathenish. I need my English major woman over here. Repugnant, that's the word. This is Miala Leong. I work with her in the Department of Native Hawaiian Health. She works with Ahakane. Another historical exposure, land privatization from communal land tenure to non-Hawaiians owning land and land being viewed as a commodity. U.S. occupation in 1893, evident in the flag, and compulsory acculturation. Our people had to assimilate into the mainstream to survive, whether that be not speaking your native tongue or hiding away your traditional knowledge. You had to put that on the back burner to support yourself and your family. Historical outcomes as a result of those historical exposures. Feelings of powerlessness, loss of identity, shame, hopelessness, chronic stress as a result, and invisibility. Does anyone recognize this photo of the woman and the 5 men to her right? Yes, Thalia Massey. Is anyone not familiar with it? So I can explain it. Oh, ke aloha, okay. Okay, this might be a little graphic. So in the 1930s, this woman accused 5 local men of raping her and abusing her. They were tried and they were found not guilty. After they were released, after not being found guilty, Joseph Kahahavai, the man in the middle, was abducted, taken in the back seat, beaten, and shot in the back of his head. He was found dead. The people who did it was her own family, as well as she was the wife of a naval officer, an American naval officer, so they took matters into their own hands. The family was found, the people who did it, the perpetrators were found guilty, sentenced to 10 years of hard labor, but instead the governor appointed at the time just gave them 1 hour of office time as a punishment. So that's one example of powerlessness. It kind of resembles what you see in the media with Didi, is that his name? Yes. So these things are still occurring, these things are still happening, and these feelings that are listed here are still present. And they have major implications on our health, whether you internalize them or not. Anyone familiar with microaggressions? It's when a dominant culture comes up to you, says something that is extremely, extremely rude, inappropriate, and you're supposed to just shut it off because you come off as too sensitive. I'll give you an example. So I'm from Nānākuli High School, and when I go to school and I speak, people tell me, oh, what year did you graduate from Kamehameha? There's nothing wrong with Kamehameha. And I say, I graduated from Nānākuli. And what they say to me is, you speak so well. You've come so far. That's an example of a microaggression. Yeah. And that's an example of inspiration. So the current outcomes that we see today is poor health, poverty, and diaspora. Diaspora just means that the ancestral people that occupied in one area is no longer found in that area, they're found in other locations. Diaspora, for example, these council members of Hawaii civic clubs across the other states. And we can go outside and we can see today the poverty, the homelessness that we have, which is not an issue necessarily, it's the result of so many other factors that we want to just shove under a rug. Not we, certain people on that side of the island want to shove under the rug and call it a problem, an issue. But there are so many deeper rooted issues as to why that even is there in the first place. And poor health. That assessment and priorities report found that table, this is just one chart that comes from it. This is mortality rates for leading causes of death in Native Hawaiians and against all other ethnicities. For Native Hawaiians, we are 68% higher. We have a 68% higher mortality risk or death risk of dying from heart disease, 34% higher for cancer, 20% for stroke. So you get the gist, right? We're up there. That's a problem. We need to address it. I'm very passionate about this. Thank you, Wai'anae, for this photo. So with all this information, all this training in my public health program and specialization, where was I going to go with this? What was my path? How am I going to spend the rest of my life? How am I going to leave my mark in this world and for my people? And build upon the legacies set before us by our ali'i and other Hawaiian patriots. So I went to my mentor and I asked her, I want to study Nānākuli. I want to know the mortality rates from when it first was created all the way up until now. And I sat in her office, she looked at me and she goes, "It doesn't exist." And I said, "What do you mean it doesn't exist?" She says, "It doesn't exist." And I said, "Can I just go to the Department of Health and just ask them for their records?" And she said, "No, because they won't let you for some reason." And I asked her, "Have you tried?" She has a PhD. They didn't let her. Something to do with liability issues. But as a researcher, why can't you go up, if you're seeking for, if you have the right intention, the right purpose, and the right clarification to do so, I don't understand what the problem is. Why are you withholding data? So, to address this, I want to create a Native Hawaiian Epidemiology Center. And this Epidemiology Center will help to funnel resources for Native Hawaiian communities that have programs in place already that address the health needs of their community. Because every community within Hawaii has their own special, unique issues, problems, health. So one olelo no'eau is mohala I ka wai, kamaka o ka pua, unfolded by the waters are the faces of flowers. Flowers thrive where there is water, as thriving people are found where living conditions are good. Intuitive things. Such as one program is Ka'ala Farms, Ahakane, Nakamakai and Halenalu, and of course, the Center for Gifted and Native Hawaiian Children, Napua No'eau, and Papahana Kuo'ola. But the challenges that these programs face include decentralized communities, funding shortages, limited data for monitoring Native Hawaiian populations, and limited expertise in accurate use of data surveillance and evaluation. So this is the information cycle. You want to understand the health of a population, you first have to survey them, you have to analyze them. And as a result, all that information can help inform policy that you can take to the ledge. And then from that, you can allocate funding to service those programs and address those needs. But if you stop from that health data research component, then all the other components fail. There's no point, the wheel can't turn. And that is what my project essentially is, and perhaps my career. But there are limitations to acquiring this data. Our data is lumped with Asians. People think that white populations in America have the best standards of health, but they don't. Asians have the best standards of health in America. So when you lump a population that is ours, that have the worst health standards, with a population that has the best health standards, you're skewing what is actually happening, and you're making us invisible. Another limitation that the federal government has is that because we represent less than 1% of the population, they will not report our findings in any of their literature. And if they want to, so my mentor works with them, and the reasons why they don't do it, another reason is because they don't want to invest the money for such a small population like us. That's the reality of it too. It's about money. And another issue, a limitation, is that there is no existing data surveillance that is tailored and specifically for Native Hawaiians, which is something that would be extremely influential and needed. So this is my intervention. This is like Ma'ilikukahi, the auai that brought so much prosperity to the land within the concept and the construct of data, is to create a Native Hawaiian Epidemiology Center. And epidemiology literally means the study of what is happening with a people or what is happening upon a people. It studies how disease moves through a population. It studies where does it come from, where is it going, how can we contain it, how can we destroy it, or how can we just attenuate it. It is evidence-based, it informs policy, and it targets where money should go. So like I said, it's community-based. The intention would be to staff it with scientists and public health professionals from the Native Hawaiian community. It would collaborate with private Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander organizations and other organizations domestically and internationally. And it would be modeled after the urban Indian epidemiology centers found in the United States, as well as the Maori Epidemiology Center. It was first created in, I think, 2010 as a subsidiary within Papa'ololakahi, the Native Hawaiian Health Board. Unfortunately, it dissolved because there was no Native Hawaiians that could fill those positions within the Epidemiology Center, which is why the specialization in Native Hawaiian and Indigenous health was created, so people like us can fill those positions. So it would operate to collect Native Hawaiian data, to analyze Native Hawaiian data, to report it, And it would be a guidance for intellectual property so it's not misused by other researchers. For my program, in my Advanced Determinants Native Hawaiian Health, we had to create a causal model. This was inspired by my kumuhula, a boy, from oli that we did that is honored to Ka'iolani. It's called the Na'ulu causal model. So what I transposed onto this was my idea of how I could effectuate change through creating a Native Hawaiian Epidemiology Center upon the information cycle that I previously presented. So the NHEC would act as that na'ulu. A na'ulu is a rain that comes suddenly. It appears out of nowhere, and it's refreshing. And so NHEC would supplement that cycle so that it actually turns, it actually moves, that it actually moves funding, that it actually moves health data, that it actually moves health to our people. And hopefully it can add to the Waihona Ola o Kalahui, the health repository that, like a water basal land, can slowly be encroached by those other limiting factors, such as the historical traumas our people experienced before and the current traumas that we experience now. At any time, ask me questions. Anytime. So for my summer through fall, probably through spring 2015, my practicum is trying to figure out how to get the money to create the NHEC program or center. My funding sources that I'm currently working with is the Institute for Biotechnology Futures, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Another deliverable that I have to uphold is creating a Data 101 and Epidemiology 101 community curriculum that I can actually go into the community, teach what is data, how to use data, how to analyze it, as well as how to implement epidemiological tools. Another is to create and publish a Native Hawaiian data resource catalog. So if you want to know where data is housed, where can you extract it? That catalog would fulfill that purpose. Another is, after creating the Epidemiology Center, is to have a memorandum of understanding written up that would be negotiated between Kamehameha schools, Native Hawaiian organizations, agencies, and Ali'i Trust, like Kamehameha schools. And all the while collaborating with Native American, Alaska Native, and Maori epidemiology centers. So the candy at the end of all this is we can promote epidemiological means to identify and monitor Native Hawaiian health priorities. We can improve community capacity to manage and use information or data. We can work with Native Hawaiian communities to take action on their own health and health disparities. And we can generate Native Hawaiian research independence. This is all about governance. This is all about taking control of our health, that we don't need permission to access what we need to. We don't need permission to create the structures needed. We can just do it. And that is my purpose.
So currently, what is the closest thing to what we do? Is there, like, everybody uses statistics from somewhere, right, for their grants?
Right.
So what is the closest thing that we have right now in Hawaii that can help us do the work that you do?
Okay, so there's the United States Census Bureau data. There's something called BREFAS. There's NHANES, NHANES. And Hawaii, the Department of Health has their own data. Of course, all the names are taken out, and it's just purely numbers and ethnicity, etc. I can give you a full list if you want.
I just one thing, because we know that this is extra special for our community here.
Yeah.
We know how important and vital this work is for us. But then, you know, people will say, well, Ohana print out their strategic plan, they said this, this, and this. But you're saying that that's not enough. It's not enough for us to create the change that we're seeking.
Yes. Especially because, which is why I kind of want to go into law school. I don't know. I'm still on the fence. But I was thinking about a PhD program. But there's a 1997 federal mandate that says every state has to put on their census survey Native Hawaiian as an ethnic category, but only a handful of states actually comply with that federal mandate. And because of that, our numbers are not representative of what is actually there. Do you know that Native Hawaiians are more in numbers on the continent than actually within the Pai'aina? That is amazing. So there is all our po'e are over there, but they're not being counted. And as a result, we're invisible. Our plight is not heard. No one knows that we exist, or our health outcomes are what they are now.
Excuse me, why isn't there a penalty for them not doing that if the federal government tells them to?
Exactly. I don't know, which is why I want to become a lawyer and go to every state and enforce it. It really pisses me off. And this is why I love public health, because it's extremely political. Public health is, all of this is political. Our current situation is political. I feel like if you don't shout, if you don't make yourself heard, if you don't put yourself at the table, you will be on the menu, and people will decide what to do with you.
In the political arena, it is a dog-eat-dog rat race. Yeah? And it's who's going to fill my pocket first. So I will help you if you put more money in my pocket. You know, let's face it, that's the world how it is, the politician world.
Right.
So going into that direction, don't you think you'll run into a lot of walls, obstacles?
I'm really happy you brought that up.
That's why you want to be a lawyer.
I feel like improving health for Native Hawaiians, it's not about this. All this is downstream. These are just treatment. These are just Band-Aids. The real issue is that we don't have any control politically of ourselves.
Right.
That's the issue. We're landless. That's the mea nui. That's the thing that's most upstream. These are all downstream effects. But we have to play this game, right?
Right.
And we have to compete, which is kind of sick, with Native Americans, because they're trying to secure their own funding. Right.
Well, a lot of it has to do with just awareness. So I lived in DC for a long time, and I work for the NIH. It's a federal agency, and they don't even know we exist. They don't even know our numbers. They do still aggregate data. They lump us together with Asians and other ethnic groups that hide the actual data. And so when I went to the administrators and talked to them, shared our story, they were just floored because they didn't understand, where I come from, what we are. Right. And so I think a lot of not necessarily political, but raising more awareness out there. And I'm actually grateful that our poe are there, that some of them help us to raise awareness for our lahui at those sites where it's needed. They have to see us. We have to be present. We have to be face to face with them. We have to be in their face in order for them to really understand who we are. Because they're not going to understand us just by, I don't know. So I think, I'm grateful that you're pursuing this career, and go for your JD. Just do it. You can do it. And I think that could help with this structure. So.
And which is why I firmly believe with the creation of this, you cut out the middleman. You just go straight to your health agendas and you advocate for them. Yes.
Have you already, what's the word? Receive your data, your information for go back, erase. I'm with the Wai'anae Coast Comprehensive Center. I'm on an advisory council that approves or disapproves research in our community. Mm-hmm. You're doing something from the Hawaiian point of view. On one of the researches, we have doctors, local girls, that are doing a research on unwanted pregnancies, which is anti-Hawaiian because all babies are wanted. It's just when.
Right.
So their research is to teach the system that you cannot put the Hawaiians in that category. Like what you're trying to say is you cannot put the Hawaiians in a lump sum. There are unique things for us. So How come you don't come up to the Wai'anae Coast Comprehensive?
I want you to put together something and propose it to our PO and our associate director, because we have a lot of the information that you need.
Exactly.
So but you need to propose it to us, because we weren't aware that this is something that is happening at that level. So when you bring it to the actual community, which is us, we can help you start this. It's a base. Yay. And that's what we need. We need to hear from you. We need you to propose it to our directors, to our board of directors, so that they know that this is something that can help not only you, but us too, because now if we collaborate together, we can help our community bring it full circle. So do that. And if you need the information, you can come and see me, and I can help direct you to the right areas and the right people. And exactly what Kaimi is talking about. So
Right now we have breastfeeding, the unwanted babies, domestic violence.
Drug.
No, that one is somebody else.
Yeah,
but
we have parts of that.
and then eating, obesity thing. So, and it's all around Native Hawaiians. So other people are researching in our community for the data, and so it's a shared data. You might want to see that.
I'm just letting you know that this is all built upon my mentor's work. This is all her work, and I'm just helping to pai. Yeah, I stand on her shoulders.
I still have another question. You mentioned something very important about the amount of Hawaiians on the mainland, and they're not being registered, yeah? Mm-hmm. But I know on the mainland we have Hawaiian civic clubs. Mm-hmm. So would that be a venue for you to investigate through the Hawaiian civic clubs? And you've got a great topic. Hawaiian Civic Club has a convention next month on the Big Island.
Are you going to take it with you?
No, give it to that boy over there. The one you like to be one lawyer. Go with that.
Another impediment, though, is the actual state. Is many of them don't want to allocate funding for that because it costs money, right, to just put that little Native Hawaiian print on their survey. That's another impediment.
How they want to be heard.
You're right. So we have to make noise.
So your work, if this goes through, then it's not dependent on the state, right?
No, it would act external.
So how would the data collection happen on a broader level? How would the data collection happen on a broader level? You guys would be going into every single community or working with community organizations and health centers or civic club,
Yes.
in order to collect all of that.
So my advisor has spent the better half of her career, actually I think most of her career, in data, epidemiology center work. And she has actually the data sets right now. She just doesn't have the infrastructure to house it, and she doesn't have the infrastructure to analyze it. So once this is built, hopefully it will all come together. Yeah. It's kind of like, I know this is a really touchy subject, but it's kind of like people won't recognize us until we're all organized into one government, you know, for Native Hawaiians, one governing entity. It's kind of like that. If you build it, they will come. We just have to build it. Yeah. I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. Department of Native Hawaiian Health.
Are there any other questions?
Oh.
Maybe you said this already and I missed it, but how far are you away from starting this epidemiology center?
There's one grant that's due by the end of December of this year, and then there's another grant that's due by the end of July of next year.
Did you say grant?
Yes.
And who are you getting the grant from?
The grant is from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention and from the Institute of the Institute for Biotechnology Futures. It's an interdisciplinary organization that operate, well, their claim is that they're non-biased and they are not swayed by political, scientific forces that would, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm still feeling it out. Well, we are still feeling it out. But I'm extremely confident that this will be built. If you can build it for urban Indians, if you can build it for Alaska Natives, if you can build it for other indigenous people, then what's wrong with Native Hawaiians? Yeah.
Where?
As soon as we get the money, I'll tell you.
You gotta know the budget first. You gotta know the budget.